as Neville pointed out, I'm just briefly going to go over the project. He did say this was a conversation, so please, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, the mayor knows more about this than I do, as does Councillor Hundleby. So please, if I make a mistake, just correct me, and yeah. So let's have a conversation rather than me just lecturing. So first, what is the Esquimalt Village project? The earliest notes I can find in my records come from 2003. I'm not sure if council was thinking about it before then. And then there's a kind of crescendo to about 2010 when council actually looked at a rezoning application and in fact got as far as third reading on a rezoning application, and then I came on board and suddenly things didn't go as fast. But now, now we're going to pick things up again. So it's a mixed-use project in the heart of Esquimalt, right next to the town office. We've envisioned workforce housing. Many, as you know, many of our sailors and people at the dockyard, our shipwrights and mechanics don't live in Esquimalt, but they work here. And in our minds, we think it would be great if they also lived in the same community they worked in. So that's the concept of workforce housing, that people who come here to work will actually be able to live here. It'll also probably incorporate a library. It'll have some ground floor commercial. Where, recently we've talked about this whole concept of a resource recovery center. Sewage is actually liquid gold, as Neville had alluded to. And so maybe we'll go in the gold mining business. There's also, we've been talking with the Justice Institute of British Columbia, that they will actually open a campus on the Esquimalt Village property. So we hope to encourage that. So design teams should think about this type of concept. There are 3 phases, at least in principle. The phase around the Esquimalt Village Center is phase 1. Phase 2 goes across the Fraser Street and incorporates parts of the lands north of the Recreation Center, and phase 3 is the Archie Browning area. I don't think that this competition has to be constrained by those 3 phases. I think we want the design teams to use their imagination, use their creativity, and come up with their own phasing models. I don't think there should be any idea that this is constrained by what's gone on before. In phase 1, the initial analysis looked at about 20,000 square meters of gross floor space. That includes everything. That's the housing, the library, the commercial. At that time, we weren't talking about resource recovery, so obviously that would be an additional space. But that's just approximate magnitude. Again, design teams should use their imagination and not be constrained by that number. So a little bit about the context. I think most of us are from the Esquimalt area, but for those who are not, that's a little red circle there is the Esquimalt Village site. We see on the lower right, part of the city of Victoria. On the extreme left, we see Naden and the dockyards from CFB Esquimalt. And of course, sort of lower right here, is McLaughlin Point, former site of the proposed sewage treatment plant. Getting a little closer, we can pick out a few points of interest. This is the site. This is the Municipal Hall here. We have Bowen Field here, Archie Browning here, the Rec Center here, Memorial Park, some residential areas. So this is the context. This site is ideally located as a precinct for everything you need to live and work in the same place. We have the Recreation Center for your sports and enjoyment in Archie Browning. We have shopping mall for all your daily and weekly goods. And of course, as mentioned earlier, we have all the employment centers of Naden and the shipyards in Work Point. And then finally, we'll zoom right into the site. So again, here's the town office as it exists today. This building obviously doesn't exist anymore. It's the old town office. Most of this is gone now. It's the old public works yard. This is the last remaining building. So the area outlined in red is owned by the municipality, and for this competition, this is the area we can control. I think the design teams can look at approaching adjacent neighbors about perhaps entering into certain types of partnerships. This is daycare here. Perhaps the owners of the daycare might be interested in incorporating their daycare into a brand new state-of-the-art living building in exchange for a land swap. But that's their business, not municipalities. And this, of course, is a little strip mall up here. Again, there may be the possibility of land swaps or land trades or partnerships. That's for design teams to work on. We have our fire hall and police station here, and some more commercial here, and residential, of course, and a park across the street. We are about to get registered 2 reference plans, so the design teams will have the latest and greatest information on the boundaries and area of this parcel. It's 0.8 hectares, so this is just surveyed last year and will be registered at Lantel's office in the next couple of weeks. So this information is freely available to all design teams and will help in terms of doing detailed design on the site. And we have across the street, so this is the area we were looking at before. This is the fire hall and police station here. Might also be inbounds for design teams. They're welcome to incorporate that property. We own it, so they're welcome to think about it and incorporate it into their possible designs as part of a creative and innovative approach to this site. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about governance. The land that we've talked about so far is all owned by the Township of Esquimalt, except for the daycare and the little shopping mall that I pointed out earlier. Final ownership model has not been determined. Again, so the design teams are free to think about possible ownership models. Maybe we retain ownership, maybe we enter into a partnership, maybe we sell. It has to be in the best interest of the Township of Esquimalt, and we need to protect the taxpayers of Esquimalt, so we're not going to enter into any type of financial model that doesn't protect our taxpayers or puts them at potential jeopardy. We are a low-risk entity. We are, council is paid to protect the bank account of its taxpayers, so we're not a high-risk investor. We might look at, for the housing component, we might look at the Whistler model, where for workforce housing, the housing is lands donated by the owner, and then the housing is built at cost and sold to workers at cost. Encumbrances are put on title to prevent the housing being sold at any price above the consumer price index. So that stops profit taking, but allows an affordability model for housing. So we're open to new and different types of housing models. Co-housing, all those types of things are on the table for innovative and creative approaches. Ultimately, though, the decision lies with council on whether or not we adopt any of those models. Official community plan amendment will probably be required, as will a zoning amendment. Often we do site-specific zoning in Esquimalt, and there, as I said, there is a zoning bylaw halfway through the process. I don't think design teams should be constrained by that bylaw. I think it's all open, it's creative, innovative, and design teams can propose whatever they believe is good for the township in terms of their living building designs. So yeah, design should not be constrained by existing zoning or OCP. In fact, it'd be useful for design teams to read through the OCP, but not be constrained by it. So site characteristics, the site is flat. There's a gentle slope from north to south. In terms of building design, you could easily have a building that enters at one level on Esquimalt Road and it exits at a different level on Carlisle. So there's some nice design features that could be incorporated into a building. The site's completely serviced. It's disturbed. Existing uses are a parking lot, bay for a fire truck, and a playground. And it's surrounded by residential, industrial, or institutional and commercial uses. So really nice precinct just waiting for the right type of development. Any questions or concerns so far? Okay. Yep.
I was just wondering about the city hall. Now, the city hall, municipal hall, is not that old. And so would the design plans be allowed for distribution so that people could incorporate that or make changes or whatever?
I think things like district energy system could be connected to the municipal hall. The library, the vision is that the library will move out of the municipal hall, and maybe something like the archives will move into the library space. That's just one possibility. But the building itself will stay, but it might be added to, it might be connected. But I think the actual physical building is too new to take out of the picture. So it'll stay, but there may be modifications and ways of integrating it into any proposed new design. Is that? Thanks. Yes, Claire.
As this is being looked at now as Esquimalt's sewage treatment plant, possibly, is the hookup system work on that property, like flows in? And we've never got that far on the other plant.
That's correct. That's an excellent question. The big, huge CRD main actually goes down Lyle Street, so it's not far. But anything below the elevation of a sewage treatment plant here, which would probably include the English Inn where we are now, the sewage would probably have to be collected at McCully and pumped back a short distance into the station and flow back again. So there are definitely some constraints in those terms, but we do not have to build 18 kilometers or 36 kilometers of pipeline for this project. But there may be some pipeline because everything below the elevation of the bottom of the sewage treatment plant on this site is going to have to be pumped back. So I can see it getting collected at McCully, and then we have to build a short line back, and then depending on what the final project is, whether it's clean water or some type of residual water, we will have to find a way to get rid of that. It might be irrigation, don't know yet. All right. So site aspirations, we need to, as the mayor did this morning, acknowledge our heritage. There is a totem pole on this site. We haven't really talked to the First Nations about whether we could move it or not. I think the design team wants to call and contact both chiefs and talk about their aspirations for this site. We, as you can see on the side of the town office there in the background, we have First Nations mural. So we have done quite a bit in terms of recognizing the First Nations, and I think all design teams should probably incorporate some type of recognition of First Nations into their projects. We have to acknowledge our history. There is a memorial to the HMCS Esquimalt. There's also a memorial to the different ships that were served during the Second World War. And so we need to talk to D&D and the soldiers and sailors about how they would like their history acknowledged on this site. So that's important, and if you're not from here, you may not realize how important those two things are. And I'd strongly encourage all design teams to talk to both the First Nations and to the Legion and D&D about how to celebrate their history and heritage on this site. We need to acknowledge nature. The two giant Gary oaks there are unlikely to be removed, so any design team will need to design around those and probably celebrate them. We need to acknowledge aspect and relationship to the street, place for a community gathering, and that this will in fact be the heart of the community. And so in terms of design and thinking about design, I think the design teams will need to think about all those things. So the site strengths, and we often in design build on our strengths. It's in the core of the township. It's in close proximity to township offices and the council chamber, so it's the heart of government and administration. and very close proximity to the recreation center. So if you live there, you can imagine you can send your children to the library on the first or second floor and send some other children to the swimming pool, or you go to the swimming pool, which is 100 meters from your front door. There are very few sites in the world that have those types of amenities on your doorstep. And one of them is right here. Close proximity to major bus routes. On Esquimalt Road, there's 3 or 4 major bus routes, including the upcoming Smart City bus route. Bus route 15X will probably start in September. 15X will join Dockyard to Esquimalt Town Core, to Camosun College, to the University of Victoria. So it will be the intelligent route.
You didn't say well roads.
Okay, we'll have a. So yeah, we are going to be on the major route between the major educational institutions, except for railroads, and there may be a bus we can connect to all the roads. Yeah. So yeah, that's an incredible advantage to have an express bus to those types of institutions when you live in downtown Esquimalt.
Bill, I have a question in regards to proximity to the grade schools and high schools. Do the local schools have the capacity to take additional children?
I believe they do, yes. In fact, that's one of the things we need to really work on in Esquimalt, is getting more students into our schools. Yep. Okay, and then above the 3rd floor, yeah, you have clear views of the ocean, of the Washington State, of downtown Victoria. Absolutely incredible views. Site weaknesses, remediation is required. This was the site of our former public works yard. So there is some contamination. We have done a report to look at the contamination. It's not that serious, and if we build a sewage treatment plant 60 feet below the ground, that contamination will be gone. It'll be trucked off by default. It is an awkward shape, as you saw earlier. It's got little notches. It's not a nice big rectangle, so that'll be a challenge. And as we'll see shortly, it has some very brutal edges, which the architects and urban designers will need to take care of. So we have gathered a fair amount of information. We have a geotechnical study completed that says preliminarily it's fine to build a 12-story building here. We have an archaeological study completed, which says we are unlikely to find any archaeological artifacts. As I mentioned earlier, 2 registered plans are about to go to land title's office, so we'll have legitimate boundaries established. Site contamination study, the site is contaminated. There's a remediation plan in terms of reference coming to council, I believe, on Monday, if not this Monday, on the next council meeting. And the land title study has been completed by our lawyer, and there are no significant constraints. We need to keep pedestrian corridor through the site, so design teams should bear that in mind. But other than that, there's no significant constraints.
Bill, parking. Are there policies that engage, or are they dormant at this moment awaiting the outcome?
So we do have a parking bylaw, and the expectation is the design team will start with the parking bylaw in mind. So once they have the uses, residential uses, commercial, library, they will do their calculation. But we are a community that believes in parking variances because this site is on 3 significant bus routes and close to employment. We will certainly entertain, again, variances, as you know, are a council decision, not staff. But we will certainly entertain and have entertained in the past variances to parking in exchange for being close to work areas of employment, bus routes, and in exchange for things like car co-op and stuff like that. So, parking will be underground, almost certainly, which makes it a little more expensive, but definitely we'll look at variances. Councillor Hundleby.
Accessibility, if you might just speak to that.
Yes, the building code, this building will have to conform to the building code, and the building code for something this big requires elevators and all kinds of accessibility. And the community is accessible community. We are committed to that, so I don't think there should be any problems with accessibility. In the Athletes Village in Whistler, a certain percentage of those units the council has made the designers, and it's lucky that we own the land, there is a certain percentage of units in the Chickamus Crossing neighborhood in Worcester that are accessibly oriented. Lower light switches, bigger doors, special handles, because that was also the Athletes Village for the Paralympics. So the whole thing is very much designed for accessibility, and we can apply those same principles here. There's a question at the back. A brutal edge? I'm going to show you what a brutal edge is coming up. Solar, so yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second too. Okay. So in terms of urban design, this is, originally this was an urban design project, and sewage treatment is a sort of a recent addition. We don't want to forget that the design teams need to focus on urban design. So it needs to focus on environmental modeling. This is where the solar comes in. We talk about architectural vernacular, and Esquimalt really doesn't have its own vernacular, which is a good and bad thing. Unlike, say, a place like Worcester, it has a fraudulent vernacular, which is European Alpine. It bears no resemblance at all to place or location. One of the more recent buildings built in Worcester is the new library, which doesn't look European at all. It is based on energy modeling, so solar access. So I think this is what we want in our building too. We want the design teams to look at solar aspect, solar gain, all those types of things, and design the building, put the building through their models, their environmental models, and design accordingly. So it's a living building, and it should be designed as a living building, not on some type of preconceived architectural vernacular. Does that answer the solar question? Okay. It needs to connect to the street. It's on Esquimalt Road, our main arterial, so it needs to respond to the street. It can't just be a blank wall. The best example of a blank wall is the municipal hall. As you walk past the front of the municipal hall towards the La Belle Petite, there's an enormous concrete wall right against the sidewalk. That is the worst possible example of urban design you could imagine almost. So we don't want to repeat that. So yeah, we need things like windows and doors on the street so people can see out of the building on the street and out from the street into the building. It needs to connect to the adjacent neighborhoods. There needs to be conviviality, and we looked this up in the last workshop we had on May 10th. That means enjoyment of food and fellowship together. So we need to develop a design that promotes conviviality. It needs to be mixed use, as we talked about before, and it is the heart of Esquimalt, and it needs to have the stamp of an incredible building that represents the community. Just a little photograph of how the site's used by people now. You can see that kind of in the center is a person sleeping there. Towards the right near the flagpole is a lady drinking her coffee. Further to the right in the shadow is a guy in a hoodie sitting on a bench. And then you can see this lady on the sidewalk walking past us. So when we do design, we always ask, how can we design so that people will use the site as much as possible? So design teams need to be cognizant that this is a place for people first. Sewage comes second. And so we want the design teams to carefully consider the use of the site by people. Now, the question on brutal edges. Here's your answer. If you look down there, that is an extremely ugly urban environment. It has a wonky sidewalk with two different types of materials. There's nothing really to define the edge of the road. It's a big ugly parking lot with no landscaping. That's what a brutal edge is. So, through the design process, we want to convert this brutal edge to something like this. Now this happens to be Worcester, which is the only example I could find in a hurry. But it's not what this is fraudulent Alpine. It's not the design we're looking for. But this is the concept. We want livable streets, not brutal edges. Does that help? Okay.
I'm just thinking, Bill, that you've made a lot of references to Whistler, and I wondered if you might explain your background in relation to Whistler, because some people may not know.
Okay, so I'll explain a little bit of my background. I'm not sure how much is relevant, but anyhow, I grew up in Alberta, which explains a lot of things. Went to university in Ontario, which explains more things. I worked for Alberta Municipal Affairs, City of Medicine Hat, Southeast Alberta Regional Planning Commission, Town of Canmore, Town of Banff, Resort Municipality of Whistler, and then I came to the most beautiful place, Esquimalt. There you go. So that's my history. I spent 8 years in Whistler getting the community ready for the Olympics. Yeah.
My name's Gay. I'm just recently here from Calgary, so I've seen a lot of those things you've talked about. And, one of the things in your comment before about the brutal edge, one of the things I find really interesting about Esquimalt is that it's not uniform, is that there's a lot of eclecticness of it, and sort of that uniformity of anywhere is built in the world. We saw a lot of that in Calgary, and I hope that that's not the intent here, to kind of uniformize or standardize out all the very interesting eclecticness that we have in Esquimalt.
Yeah, absolutely not. No. So design teams are asked to respond to location and environment, and this is unique, as we said, a unique place in the world, and so design will be unique to this space. So community aspirations, this is a catalyst for renewal. How are we doing for time?
Good. Yep, we're good.
Okay. We've recently gone through the economic development strategy roundtables and heard over and over and over again through almost all 8 thematic tables that we have to get going on Esquimalt Village project. So the community seems prepared, ready to go. As we said before, it's mixed use, promotes live, work, play. From this location, you can walk to work, come home, go to the recreation center, and then go home and have dinner, type of thing. There are very few places in the world as unique as this place. So we need workforce housing, a library, Justice Institute of BC, some offices, and neighborhood commercial, and maybe, hopefully, another financial institution. So emerging aspirations, a living building, this is what this contest is all about, or competition is all about, and we are 100% behind that. A living neighborhood, so we want this concept of a living building to extend beyond the building into the adjacent neighborhoods. We want to look at the concept of urban ecology, and so I'd like the design teams to think about that, think about systems, think about interactions. One thing we haven't talked about, but we need to, is it needs to be a digital neighborhood, very intelligent. I said we are on the intelligent bus route. Perhaps this can be Victoria's first bus route where you can look at the app on your phone, you know that the bus is going to be there in 2 minutes, or bus is full, or whatever. Those types of things. We need to think about how to make this a digitally sound development. Resource recovery, of course, is emerging as an important component. So we want state-of-the-art. That's something that perhaps the regional district wasn't quite thinking of. We need to think about carbon cycles. I think that's coming up later. Concepts as thermodynamics. These are all things we need to think about in the design of this project. And resource recovery, we're talking about both energy and matter. We need to remember the energy recovery paradox. This was something that Whistler faced in their Athletes Village. Whistler was home to one of the very first passive houses in North America. Passive houses are buildings built so well that they actually generate more energy than they require. If the Athletes Village in Whistler was built entirely out of passive technologies, it wouldn't need a district energy system. In order for a district energy system to be viable, you need leaky, energy inefficient buildings. That is the energy recovery paradox. Need to bear that in mind. Luckily, we have a swimming pool nearby that has no chance of ever being a net generator of energy. So yeah, we talked about a couple of precedents. There's Cheakamus Crossing in Whistler, which is the same thing as Athletes Village. It became Cheakamus Crossing after the Olympics. And Falls Creek in Vancouver is also collects their heat energy from the sewage system and provides energy to their former Olympic Village. So we're almost finished. In terms of process, and community engagement is extremely important. I'm not sure how a design team in South Africa will engage in our community, but we talked about the digital age, so perhaps we can have a Skype workshop or something like that. So design teams from other parts of the world can Skype with our citizens, or we can set up some type of digital community. Transparency, extremely important in this community. We need to be encouraging, creative, innovative, non-linear, which is probably part of the problem with the previous program on McLaughlin Point. It needs to be timely, it needs to be rational. So the outcomes are community buy-in, positive impact on property taxes. This council or next council will not engage in a project that puts our taxpayers at risk, as we talked about before. It needs a strong pro forma. It contributes to a global understanding of living buildings, so we want to share our experience with the world, and it needs to have a net positive impact on the environment. So finally, in conclusion, I think as a model for thinking about the development of this site, we can think about our own Earth, about the cycles, and how energy and materials are cycled through our sort of global ecosystem, just bring that down to a local scale. And because Brazil is prominently shown on this particular image of the world, and because they are currently undergoing a global competition, which is very important to some of us, finally I just will acknowledge that
Look at the top left corner, somebody kicked the ball high.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, so we will acknowledge another global competition underway right now. Any questions? Mayor.
Thank you, just earthquake.
Oh, excellent. Yes, we are in the center, Canada's highest probability of earthquakes. We're in the epicenter of that. And it will have to, this building will have to be designed to do that. Luckily, we do have a precedent, which is the D&D fire hall down the street. And so the design team should look at that fire hall and what they've done there. They've done some incredible things.
So it's a lifeline kind of work.
Yes, absolutely.
I believe that the southern edge of the site across the road are single-family homes.
Yes.
Does that restrict what would be acceptable on that southern face?
So the design team can look at a transition in this building from there. We can also, the design team will have to ask the question, those are older homes, and whether they will always be single-family homes. They may slowly evolve into townhouses. There may be a transition offsite as well as on this site. So yeah, the design teams will need to think of the transition between existing and proposed use. James.
What kind of height considerations might be community acceptable? What would be factors influencing what would affect the community acceptance of different elevations of the building on its own?
So several years ago, council went through an extensive process of community engagement, looking at building heights. And for large parts of Esquimalt Road, is designated in the official community plan as 12 stories. Now 12 stories has to be concrete and steel construction. It can't be wood frame, which is more expensive. So one of the things that design teams are going to have to look at in their pro forma when they do this is whether or not, based on existing housing market, you can sell units in a 12-story concrete building and make a profit. And so that is going to be a very, very important question. So in terms of height, 12 is the maximum. Probably going to be a little lower based on market conditions, but that'll be for design teams to think about. Yes?
When you mentioned you're going to go 60 feet down, the foundation will be quite a bit deeper. Is it rock or soil?
So the initial testing, and it may not be 60, it might be 50 or 40 feet, but it's going to be down there. There's a combination of rock and clay from the initial drilling. So there may have to be some excavation of rock, yes. Yes.
With the Tudor House parking lot, and I know it's another block and a half over, but are you going to be incorporating that, or is there any sort of feedback from the Tudor House people, from the Dumas, as what's going on with their property? Would you tie in at all to that location since it's so close?
I spoke to Mr. Dumas the other day, and no, we haven't tied the two properties together. They have their own aspirations, but certainly I think in terms of sharing design ideas, we'd be more than happy to. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Mark?
Timelines vis-a-vis the CRD's threats with, with fundings for such things as sewage treatment. Will we be able to get this project functioning in time to be eligible for any grants?
Don't know yet. The minister and the mayor is probably better to answer this question than me. The minister, I don't know. Do you want to answer the question?
The minister has given all indication that timelines are as they are now, and 2020 is the deadline for being online with sewage treatment. So we need to have that consideration as well. Nowhere in the processes have we ever gone back to the federal government to question that guideline. But the provincial minister was very clear.
Thank you. Blair?
When is the closing or planned closing of this competition? And secondly, is it a complete design, or can it be piecemeal, looking at what the timelines the mayor just stated?
I'll take that one. The competition, and correct me if I'm wrong here with the exact date, but we're expecting the submissions in October for judging in time for the award ceremony will be in conjunction with the Living Building Symposium. And in terms of your second question, which is the plan to be complete or just one aspect of it, we're looking for complete concepts and with sufficient detail to make sure that the plan is well thought out and integrated and coherent. So that means that we necessarily have to be somewhat abbreviated in certain aspects of it, and in order to be able to get finished into that kind of timeline.
Well, can it be built in phases, though, with the plan?
There's no constraint around that. Your proposal can suggest a staged building. Yes.